program. So we care about our students and our student athletes after they leave LCA. It's not just while they're here. The school, we try to prepare them for life and for a firm foundation in Christ as they head out into the quote-unquote real world. But when it comes to college recruiting, playing sports at the next level, we really want to help our student athletes with making the right decisions, and that certainly entails you all, the families. So what I wanted to do is tonight, I wanted to explain our program. I wanted to go over something that's a real quick elementary lesson on what the difference is between the NCAA and the NAIA. We will talk about, we have an expert here to talk about academic eligibility at all the different levels. And then we have Katie Howard and Kirby Willoughby here who will share a little bit about LCA's resources, athletics and academics, and what we have here to offer our student athletes and our families to assist them in the process. And then a good chunk of the back half of the time we spend together tonight, we have a panel assembled of some experts in different areas to let you ask them questions. And I mean ask any questions, candid, and they will go through their qualifications here in a bit, but believe me, they're people that have educated opinions that can help. But before we start, I want to make sure we know what this is. The Next Step program is a source of information. It's a resource in the process. It's an opportunity to ask questions, but it's not the end-all be-all. It still is something for the families to direct. We want to provide you as much information as you need to provide you the resources to make the appropriate decisions with your child. We want to make sure you have knowledge of what those resources are, where you can find them. We want to give you a chance to ask questions. You should have received a folder as you came in tonight. Has a lot of this information, resources, websites, programs, different things that we think are important to you. What this program is not, it's not a recruiting service. We don't have the functionality, ability, or most importantly, we don't have the desire to be a recruiting service. That is something that you will make your decisions based on what you feel off the information we provide, that whether or not a recruiting service is something you want to look into. Your recruitment is ultimately up to you as a family. Our role is to assist you. We're also not promising to get your child a scholarship. All right? God's given each of your children many, many gifts and abilities. Those abilities and those gifts will ultimately dictate what happens with that child's abilities of playing at one level or another. What we do want to give you is ideas and understandings about how each level of collegiate sports works. And so you can ask them the right questions as well. And that you can seek out the right place for your child, whether that includes sports or doesn't include sports. There's no magic. There's no magic in the process. It's getting to know what your child wants, get to know what's out there and what fits best, and most of all, it just takes prayerful diligence in figuring all of that out. And we're here to be a friend to you in the process. So, before we get into academic eligibility, I did want to take a quick moment which may be elementary to some of you, but there's two major organizations in college athletics. There's the National Collegiate Athletic Association, which is commonly referred to as the NCAA or NCAA. It's a voluntary membership-based organization, and it has three divisions, Division I, Division II, and Division III. All told, there's about 1,000 members in those three divisions. About equal amounts, 300 to 350 each level. Divisions 1 and 2, most do offer scholarships depending on the programs. In Division 3, there are no athletic scholarships. At Division 3, that's not to say there's not academic monies, grant monies, and other things your child might qualify for, but there are no athletic scholarships. The NAIA is the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics, is a governing body of smaller athletic programs. They're dedicated to a character-driven intercollegiate athletics. There's about 60,000 student athletes that play at NAIA schools in the country. And there's two different divisions. All told in the NAIA, there's about $500 million in scholarships given at NAIA institutions. They both have different academic and athletic rules and interpretations, and you'll hear about especially the the academic side of that here tonight. But it's important to note that these are two distinct entities, and they're both membership driven, so the schools comprise the decision-making power in them. So as we understand kind of what college athletics is and who makes it up, the most important thing, and the reason that student is the first word in student athlete, is academic eligibility and academic standards. And so with us tonight, we have Heather McAtee. Heather is the Assistant Athletic Director for Academics and Eligibility at the University of Kentucky. She's served in this capacity at UK for more than 10 years, and she came to UK from Florida State, where she spent 4 years as the Seminoles Director of Compliance. Prior to FSU, she also served as a compliance assistant at Vandy, and she was also a collegiate swimmer at Youngstown State University. So here to present to us about academic eligibility, Heather McAtee.
Thank you. I'm not used to people clapping when I get up here, so I'm excited. So once again, I'm here to talk to you about NCAA eligibility. Basically what I'm going to cover is Division I, because that's what I'm most familiar of. Division II has very similar rules to Division I, but I'm going to focus on Division I here. So the NCAA, if you're looking to go into Division I or Division II, they have an organization called the Eligibility Center. For those of us that are older like me, you know it as the clearinghouse. Several years ago, they moved the clearinghouse from Iowa to Indianapolis, where the NCAA is located, and changed the name because they look at academic and amateurism when they do certification. So in your packet, I'm not going to try to read all this because it looks very, very small on the screen, but it's going to give you this information of exactly what are they looking for as far as academics. We're going to break it down a little bit so that you can hear the different parts, but basically talks about what we need. So what the NCAA looks for, what the Eligibility Center looks for, is they look for 16 core courses. They take the GPA only from those core courses and come up with what they call their core GPA. So the core courses are courses like English, math, science, social science, and foreign languages. They look for those courses and only use the GPA from those classes. So if you have a student who is maybe not as strong in those academic type classes, but really strong in gym and art and lunch, their GPA, from what you see on their transcript, might be a little bit different than what the NCAA uses because they're filtering out those classes and only looking at the academic classes. The NCAA also requires students to have an ACT or SAT test score. Most students in Kentucky prefer the ACT. I'm from Ohio, so I like the ACT as well. The SAT, beginning last March, has undergone a whole new facelift, and we're still trying to figure out those new scores. So I do know that the new SAT scores, if you've taken it, they're scoring a little bit higher than what the old scores are. So there is a conversion chart that we have to use as far as that goes. They take the ACT, they take your SAT, and they take your core GPA, and they kind of look at those things to come up with the answer. So, core courses. What courses do you need to take in order to be eligible? At Division I and Division II, they do look for 16 core courses. It's going to be 4 units of English, 3 units of math, Algebra 1 or higher, 2 units of science, one of them has to be a lab, an additional unit of English, math, or science, 2 units of social studies, and then 4 additional units of either all those classes we talked about or foreign languages are also put into those additional 4 units. So that is what our 16 core courses look like. As you can see, we're going to talk about the different requirements too. They've kind of changed the rules beginning August 1st, so everybody out here, we're going to be under those new rules. So there's our 16 core courses. Once again, Division II, Division I, they now are both on 16 core courses. Once again, you don't need to look at this. This is going to be in your chart. This is the sliding scale. So what the NCAA does is they take the core courses with the GPA and come up with your core GPA. They also have your ACT and your SAT scores listed in that sliding scale. if you look at it, if you take the ACT and you look at it and you say, oh my gosh, what is an 86? I have a 16. I'm way, way off. No, the NCAA, they use a sum score. What we're used to is a composite score, where they take the 4 subsections of the ACT and average them. The NCAA does a sum score, and they add up the 4 best sub-scores. It's going to be to your advantage, because with the composite score, you might keep coming up with the same score, but have different scores on the sub-scores. With the sum score, you're going to capture that when you add those all up. The NCAA takes the highest subsection no matter when you took it. So it's to your advantage to take the ACT or SAT as many times as you can, because it can never hurt you. It can only help you and raise what you need. So as you can see, the higher the GPA, the lower test score you need. The lower GPA you have, the higher test score you need. And we're going to talk about some of where we are, because there are some new standards as far as that goes. So what we're going to talk about is some of the new standards. So there are new requirements beginning this past August. Okay, right now, in the past, you had to have at least a 2.0 GPA to be considered what's called a qualifier. Starting this year, in order to compete your first year in college, you have to have at least a 2.3 core GPA. And I know I'm probably talking to a group of people that this is not an issue. We do have to say it. You have to have a 2.3 in order to compete your first year. There's also going to be some requirements as far as how many courses you have to finish by the beginning of your senior year in order to allow you to compete that first year. We're going to go through that a little bit in depth, and they've changed the sliding scale a tiny bit, not too much, not much that you would notice. Okay, so new requirements. We now have 3 different requirements at Division I. We have a qualifier, which is what we've had, which means you can practice, compete, and get an athletic scholarship your first year. There is a new category this past year called an academic redshirt. It means that you can practice and receive an athletic scholarship. However, you are not allowed to compete your first year in college. Then we have something called a non-qualifier. A non-qualifier is not allowed to practice, not allowed to compete, not allowed to receive an athletic scholarship. And in some conferences, such as the SEC and the ACC, I know they have it too, that you cannot go to their school. You have to go to junior college for 2 years. So it's very important to know where we stand here, especially if you want to compete your first year. So qualifier status, we talked about that before. The 16 core courses, the minimum GPA of at least a 2.3, and graduate from high school. You meet all those, you're going to be a qualifier. You're going to be able to compete your first year. Okay, so new rule. Beginning of your senior, prior to the start of your senior year, you now must have 10 core courses completed. 7 of those core courses must be in the areas of English, math, or science. And once you have those courses, I like to call them locked in, because you cannot repeat those to get better grades. What was happening with some students is they were kind of taking their time, getting their academic work done, and then come their senior year, they were taking 8 or 10 core courses in their senior year, completing more core courses than they had the prior 3 years before that. The NCAA didn't really feel that that was fair to students that were doing it the right way the whole time, so they have now put in this requirement. So the beginning of your senior year, you have locked in your best 10 core courses. 7 of them in the English, math, or science area. 3 of them can be outside of that, or if you're really good at English, math, and science, those can be in your 10 core courses too. So those must be used in your final calculation for your GPA. Okay, sliding scale changes, like I said, they've just kind of changed some of them fractionally. We're not really going to talk about that unless you want to. No? Okay, awesome. So that is a qualifier. 16 core courses, GPA and test score matchup, 2.3 GPA, 10 core courses. Easy to remember, right? Yes. Okay, so our new category we have is this academic redshirt category. As I stated before, you would not be able to compete your first year. And in some sports like football, maybe it's not as a big deal as other sports like men's basketball. If you're a one and done player, This might be a very important rule for you to know. I'm always in the category that I want to have the most opportunities available. I don't want somebody to tell me I have to sit out. If I need to develop, that's fine, but I want to come in ready to go. So what do we do to make sure that we're not in this category? So an academic red shirt is still going to have their 16 core courses done. So same breakdown we talked about, they're still going to have that. The GPA is going to be anywhere from a 2.0 to a 2.299 area. Now you still have to meet the sliding scale. Just because you have a 2.1 GPA and 16 core courses doesn't mean that you're going to fall into this category. You still need to meet your test score requirement to be able to meet this category. Okay? And then we talked about the sliding scale. So the 2.3 is something that's kind of caught some people off guard this year, as this is a new rule. The NCAA thought they did a really good job of educating on it. No, but I know we all have students that this is not going to be a worry for, so we won't spend too much time. The other thing that can make you fall into this academic red shirt category is if you do not have those 10 core courses completed prior to the start of your senior year. So if you don't have your 7 English, Math, and Science and your 10 core courses completed, you're automatically going to fall into this academic red shirt category, even if your GPA is higher. Or let's say that you do have to actually unlock one of your core courses because you need to improve your GPA, it's going to put you in the academic red shirt category. So once again, really important to know so that you can come in with your full eligibility. Okay? We're going to talk about the sliding scale again. Once again, there's some minimal changes. So if a student does come in as an academic red shirt, I talked about they can be on scholarship, and the NCAA did not want them to get behind by not allowing them to practice for a full year. They're going to let them to practice. But they've done a lot of research, especially since we have the Eligibility Center, and especially since we do graduation rates at the institutions. They have found out that a 2.3 core GPA is very indicative of earning a college degree. So they felt that students that fell below that 2.3 still were meeting their requirements, but needed some time to get acclimated to college and get acclimated to academics. So they do not want them to compete for that first year. That first year, they shouldn't be traveling, they shouldn't be competing. It should give them some extra time to be in the classroom and get their feet under them. Once again, they didn't want them to lose a whole year of practice because that would really put them at a disadvantage for other students. So what they did though is they said, hey, we're going to look at you halfway through. So if you have a student who is an academic red shirt, after the first semester, they have to pass at least 9 hours in the fall to be able to continue to practice in the spring. So once again, they're giving everyone the advantage to do that, but if they don't pass 9 hours, they're not really progressing toward a degree at the rate that they need to be, then maybe practice is not what they need. Maybe that's a little bit too distracting. So that's something that's a little bit new this year. It's important to know. So what happens if we don't meet any of those? What happens if we don't graduate from high school? We don't have our 16 core, we don't meet the GPA test score sliding scale. You're going to be known what's called a non-qualifier. And as I mentioned before, this is nothing. No practice, no scholarship, no competition. Okay, so that was really, really quick. I'm going to be in part of the panel if you have any specific questions. Does anybody have questions right now? I know, my presentation is just not that interesting. So hopefully if I can just say, if I can remember that lady in the zebra shirt a year from now, just remember 16 core courses. Remember 2.3, 10 core courses, 7 of them English, Math, or Science. My advice to you, if you are looking to pursue this, and when you get to colleges, a lot of the academic money is also based on test scores, is I would encourage you to take the ACT or SAT as many times as possible. Colleges look at that for academic money. It's important for our sliding scale. It helps you get ready for college. So that's the one recommendation. I know the young people out there don't want to get up every single Saturday that it's offered, but it's always to your advantage. So that's the one thing. There are some great resources that the NCAA has. The one that I would recommend is that one right in the middle that's called the Guide for the College-Bound Student Athlete. That is available on their NCAA website, eligibilitycenter.org. It has a lot of information, a lot of what I talked about as far as the academic goes. They also have some great recruiting information as far as when can a coach call me, when can they email me, what can they do. They have charts for each year of high school and sports and tell you what that is, because I know that's very confusing, and it changes a lot too. So I would definitely recommend that one. If you're looking to get some more information about what can I do. The NCAA does have an online course for some information. I haven't taken it yet. I think it doesn't sound too interesting to me, but it's there for some educators if you guys want to do that. They've also come up with a new website called 2.3.org. Just once again trying to get that information out about that new 2.3 GPA requirement. Really, that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions right now? I did such a good job. You guys know everything. All right. Well, think about it. I'm going to come back up here at the very end, so please, please, please ask me anything, and I'll also be around afterwards if you have specific questions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much, Heather. Next, we want to take what Heather just presented to us and want to put it through an LCA lens. So the things that she just mentioned, what do we have here, what do we offer here? And here to discuss that for us and with us is Katie Howard, who's one of our college counselors here. Katie?
Good evening. Heather made my job easy by explaining that so well. Let me put this through an LCA lens. The average LCA student, a typical student at LCA, how are they going to earn those 16 core courses? Well, if they are grade level, meaning that they come in as a freshman at physical science and algebra 1, these are going to be their typical 16 core courses. So we know every one of our students is going to earn those 4 English credits. That is a requirement each year. Whether they do honors, regular, or move on to AP by junior and senior year, they will get 4 English credits. For math, they may begin at algebra 1 and then carry on to geometry and algebra 2. A few of our students will come in on more of a fast track for math, and so maybe they'll start out at geometry or algebra 2. And in that case, pre-cal or calculus or algebra 3 or AP stats, those all count as well as adding up to those 3 maths. For sciences, the traditional path is physical science, biology, and then chemistry. Our fast-track students are going to do an honors bio, honors chem, and then a science elective their junior year. So that can be anatomy, AP biology, whatever that looks like. They are going to be required to do 1 additional math or science. This is an LCA graduation requirement as well. For any student in the freshman class or younger, now they will do math as their 4th. So sophomores, juniors, and seniors have the option of science or math. Beginning with the class of 2020, it will be math as their 4th year. So as a senior, students can choose to take a 4th science, but they will be required to do a 4th math. For social science, our students typically take World Civ as a sophomore, US History as a junior, and Government Economics as a senior. And then we're required to have 2 years of foreign language, either Spanish or French. Of course, they can do more than this, but this is how you total up to 16 core courses. Now, if anything is failed along the way and is not made up prior to the start of senior year, we could use another one of their courses to kind of get to that. They have to have 10 of their core courses completed by the start of their senior year. And so we could use potentially like, 3 Englishes, let's say they failed a math, 3 Englishes, 1 math, 2 sciences, and a foreign language could add up. So at LCA, basically what I'm trying to say is you can't be on track for graduation at LCA and screw this up. LCA students are on track with NCAA, okay? Oh, one thing I will point out that you might be saying, wait a second, what about Bible? Our Bible courses will not count towards that core GPA. And so it has to come from these classes. And so when your student gets their transcript and they're saying, great, I have a 2.6, I'm well ahead of that 2.3. What they really need to look at is how many of my A's and B's are in Bible, art, photography, business, because those are not going to count when they reconfigure the core GPA. I want to give you a quick overview of what you can expect here at LCA in terms of preparing for college. One thing when it comes to this GPA, the advising of classes. Each year, as your student prepares for what they will take the next year, they will meet with an academic or college counselor and prepare for what classes they should take the next year. And that's how we make a decision after Algebra 2. Do I go on to Algebra 3? Do I go on to Pre-Cal? Do I take AP Stats? It's different for each kid. And so that is part of the process, and that's part of how we help you kind of keep that GPA goal in mind. Standardized testing. Here at LCA, our students take a practice ACT in the form of the Aspire test, and then an actual practice ACT as a junior. So they take that each year, freshman, sophomore, junior year. They take the practice SAT, freshman, sophomore, junior year. So they are getting 6 opportunities of practice exams before they ever have to sit for an official exam. And so what Heather was talking about, where she was saying, please take the ACT or SAT multiple times, the ACT does tend to be what our students prefer. They like that form of questioning. We offer one official ACT here for our juniors every spring. So they will get at least one here at school. Other than that, there will be 6 Saturdays throughout the year that are national test dates. They take place throughout the school year. The latest one is in June. There will not be any over the summer. And I bring that point up because as parents of athletes, you realize just how busy their schedules are, and a lot of times that they're competing on the weekends or traveling on the weekends. And so some things you need to know about the ACT or SAT. You don't have to take it here in Lexington. If you are out of town for a sporting event, they can take it, you can register for it in that town. You do typically have to register for it about 5 to 6 weeks before the exam, so it would have to be something you planned ahead of time. But I also tell you this just to say, if you're in season in the fall, if that is your busiest time, perhaps your student is not going to take their ACT in September and in October. Perhaps your student needs to make a plan to take the December ACT, the February ACT, the April ACT, or vice versa if they're a spring athlete. So there does need to be some strategizing when it comes to making sure you're available on those test dates. We will begin meeting with your student individually their junior year, and then we do a family meeting with you as well junior year. And some of the reasons that we do that, to make sure we're all on the same page. How important is playing college sport to your family and to your child? Sometimes that's all the child is interested in, and then the parent comes in and says, well, wait a second here, let's talk about the academic side as well. And so there's a few things that have to be discussed at that point in terms of what's most important in their college process. Each student will need to register. That typically happens during their junior year. They register with either the NAIA or the NCAA, or maybe both. I spoke with a student today. He's got 12 to 15 schools still on his list. He is most likely going to be a Division I athlete, and yet his list of schools is a conglomerate of Division I, Division II, a Division III, and NAIA. He really is across the board considering all different types of schools, because as he went and visited the colleges, he found things he liked about different schools, maybe the location, the opportunity for a certain major, or that his parents could come and see him, or he just really connected with a coach, and that kept a school on the list that maybe wasn't the glamorous Division I school of some of the others on the list. So you might be surprised at what captures the attention of your student as you go through the college admissions process. But registering with the NCAA, something new this year that they are offering are profile pages. And so your students, as early as whatever grade they're in now, they could create a profile page for free and begin to put their stats in there and their interest in playing an NCAA sport. By their junior year, they will most likely be ready to register for registration with NCAA. It's a $60 fee at that point. NAIA also charges for their registration. And at the end of junior year, we will send a transcript to either organization, and they will begin that process of evaluating the student and their GPA and making sure that they're academically eligible. Something else that we do with your students as they go through the college admissions process, just to give you a heads up if you don't have a child at that stage yet, by the end of junior year and beginning of senior year, we are doing an essay workshop to help them with their college essays. We are reviewing their applications senior year. We write letters of recommendation for them, and we send all of their application materials to all of these schools. And most of the time, we are dealing with admissions offices. We are dealing with the student athlete, the student portion of it. But any time that a coach calls and says that they have an interest in your student and they request a transcript to try and evaluate if they're going to be a good match, we agree and send those transcripts on to those colleges. A few things to consider. This is just something that's come up over the years, and I wanted to point it out. The selectivity of the school. And so far what we've talked about with the ACT score and the GPA is, making sure you're academically eligible, making sure you're at least meeting the minimum requirement. I want to talk about the student that maybe is kind of ahead of the curve, who has a solid test score, who has a great GPA, and who is looking to also be a student athlete. Sometimes those students can actually boost their chances at a more selective admission school because of their athletic ability. Here at LCA, we are not strangers to this. We have seen students come through who have had Ivy League interest, and as an academic student, they may not have had any upper hand in standing out from the pack, even with that GPA and that test score. But as a student athlete, it opened a door for them to be considered at some of those schools. And so what I would want you to hear when it comes to that, if you're thinking, that might be my child, they're strong academically, they test well, I could see them at a very strong academic school, and maybe athletics is the open door there. If that's your child, there's a few things I would ask you to consider, and that is not meeting just the bare minimums in our academic core classes, but challenging themselves to take on a little bit more. One of the specific areas we see this in is foreign language. We've actually had a student here in the past who did his minimum 2 years, and then when a school came knocking and said, hey, send us your transcript, we're really interested, and your test score is pretty great, and your GPA is really strong, and maybe you'd be a good fit. And one of the things they said was, oh, you only took 2 years of foreign language? Which, that's great. 2 years meets our graduation requirement. It meets the Kentucky requirements. It's going to be absolutely acceptable at most schools. But at a selective school, it was not quite enough. And it was one of those things that they had to say, oh, we're going to have to run that by our admissions office and see if they will approve it. So I bring this point up just in case we've got, students at different places in the room. And then I put the 4 years of math on there. Of course, that will be a requirement by the year 2020, but it's something that you will hear from the College Counseling Office. We encourage all of our students to take that 4th year of math and to not take time off between junior year and then freshman year of college. And then this is my last slide, and this is just a few other things that we do discuss with your student that I want you to just go ahead and start thinking about. And that is, they are going to be a student first. Terry said that, a student athlete. And so in that college setting, what does that college say about the student's time there? Their class schedule versus their practice schedule. There are going to be some universities where the students get the opportunity to register for classes first so that they can plan their courses around their practice schedules. At other universities, they will say that practice doesn't even start until classes have finished. And so it's kind of a different mentality at different levels of universities and colleges. A few other things to consider, just the travel and the time away from campus. How far away is the campus that your student is looking at? Will you as a family be able to go and watch them play? Is it something you've always kind of hoped for? But also, how much time will your student spend on the road? Look at that school's travel schedule. Look